January 17, 1945. The bitter wind cuts across the snow-swept plains of northern France. German POWs, bundled in tattered coats, are herded through a clearing near an Allied forward encampment. Steam rises in delicate wisps from canvas shower tents, the scent of hot water mingling oddly with gunpowder and mud. Soldiers emerge, laughter spilling into the cold air, droplets running down their uniforms before they vanish into warmth. Helmets clang, boots squelch in icy mud. Yet the scene is calm, almost surreal. For the German prisoners, accustomed to freezing latrines and rationed water, the sight is astonishing. Enemy soldiers indulging in hot showers mere miles from artillery fire. Their eyes widen, disbelief etched into every line of their faces, sensing an inconceivable reality. The question lingers: how could such comfort exist in the chaos of war? By the winter of 1944, the war in Europe had entered its most desperate and chaotic phase. Following the D-Day landings on June 6th, Allied forces pushed steadily inland through Normandy, liberating towns and villages, but at a tremendous logistical cost. The front lines stretched hundreds of miles across France, Belgium, and the Netherlands, with roads choked by supply convoys and snowbound terrain slowing movement. Soldiers on both sides faced bitter cold, mud-choked fields, and the constant threat of artillery and sniper fire. Survival, even before combat, depended on endurance, discipline, and scarce resources. German forces, reeling from continuous Allied advances, were retreating under immense pressure. Encirclement, starvation, and frostbite were as lethal as gunfire. Prisoners of war, captured during skirmishes or in larger engagements such as the Falaise Pocket, were forced to endure the elements in inadequate clothing, often without blankets, proper footwear, or heated shelters. Rations were meager, and hygiene was minimal, consisting of frigid streams or mud puddles used as latrines. Disease spread easily in crowded, freezing compounds. For these men, the front was an unbroken trial of physical deprivation. Meanwhile, the Allies faced their own logistical nightmares, but with a critical advantage: resources, planning, and industrial support. American, British, and Canadian armies had developed supply chains capable of moving thousands of tons of food, ammunition, and equipment daily, even under fire. Mobile medical units were established near front lines, not only to treat the wounded, but also to maintain the overall health of troops. Engineers constructed makeshift facilities, kitchens, latrines, and, unexpectedly, field showers. These were no ordinary conveniences. Heated by portable boilers, fed by water from nearby streams or storage tanks, and shielded by insulated canvas, the showers allowed soldiers to scrub off weeks of grime within minutes. In a landscape dominated by mud, blood, and steel, such small comforts became a vital psychological edge. Soldiers' daily routines reflected this careful orchestration. Mornings began with roll calls, briefings, and the preparation of field rations. Between engagements, men cleaned weapons, attended to minor injuries, and sought any opportunity to wash and rest. Hygiene was not indulgence, it was military necessity. Trench foot, dysentery, and other illnesses were constant threats, capable of sidelining hundreds of troops without a single shot being fired. Commanders recognized that a clean, rested soldier was a more effective soldier. For Allied troops, access to hot showers, even under fire, became a rare but crucial morale booster. For German prisoners encountering these facilities for the first time, the contrast was stark. While the Allies prioritized logistical planning and troop welfare, German frontline units often lacked basic necessities. Captured men would later recall in diaries and post-war interviews their amazement at witnessing steaming water, laughter, and warmth in the midst of snow and artillery fire. It was not merely comfort, it was a revelation. This moment, subtle yet profound, revealed a broader strategic truth. War was not won by firepower alone. but also by the systems, organization, and care that allowed men to endure its horrors. The scene sets the stage for the next chapter: how the Allies engineered these comforts, and how the German POWs came to witness a side of war they had never imagined. The implementation of hygiene infrastructure in forward war zones was a feat of military engineering and logistical ingenuity. As Allied armies advanced across France and into Belgium in late 1944, specialized units were tasked with constructing mobile facilities capable of functioning under extreme conditions. Shower tents were assembled near battalion positions, often just behind front-line trenches. Each tent was equipped with portable boilers or field stoves, capable of heating sufficient water for dozens of soldiers at a time. Water was sourced from local rivers, stored in canvas tanks, and treated to prevent contamination. In some instances, teams of engineers would dig temporary channels or trenches to distribute water safely, ensuring both efficiency and hygiene. The result was a simple yet remarkably effective solution. Soldiers could wash, shave, and change into clean clothing without leaving the relative safety of their encampment. The psychological impact of these facilities was as significant as the practical benefits. For men who had endured weeks of rain-soaked uniforms, mud-caked boots, and cold, disease-ridden trenches, a hot shower was transformative. Diaries and letters from soldiers frequently highlight the emotional relief and renewed sense of vitality such moments provided. Commanders understood this, and morale maintenance became a deliberate part of military planning. Troop welfare was not indulgence. It was an investment in combat readiness. The difference between a well-fed, hygienic soldier and one debilitated by disease or exhaustion could tip the scales in key engagements. By contrast, German frontline soldiers, stretched thin across collapsing defensive lines, often faced conditions of extreme deprivation. Fuel shortages meant that heating water was impossible for many units. Field latrines were scarce or frozen solid, and even captured POWs recalled freezing rain and snow mixing with mud in their makeshift camps. Rations were limited, and medical support was often non-existent. As Allied forces captured towns and villages, German prisoners observed a stark disparity, enemy soldiers enjoying basic comforts while they endured privation. The contrast was both practical and symbolic, illustrating the organizational superiority of the Allies during the final phases of the European campaign. This contrast was particularly evident in the treatment of prisoners themselves. Captured German soldiers were often escorted through Allied camps, where hygiene, warmth, and food were accessible. While not lavish, these provisions exceeded what frontline soldiers on both sides typically experienced. Many POWs later recounted their disbelief at witnessing men showering under canvas tents while the war raged around them. These observations offered a glimpse into Allied priorities. The war effort extended beyond guns and artillery. It encompassed careful planning to sustain the men who operated them. Such attention to detail would have profound effects, not only on the physical health of troops, but also on morale, cohesion, and combat efficiency. In essence, the presence of hot showers in forward war zones was a convergence of strategy, technology, and human consideration. It was a small miracle of engineering, carefully coordinated supply, and leadership foresight. For the German prisoners witnessing this, it was a revelation, proof that even amidst artillery barrages, freezing wind, and mud, the Allies could maintain order, comfort, and dignity for their soldiers. This extraordinary reality set the stage for examining multiple perspectives: human, tactical, technological, and moral angles that would define the soldiers' experience and the POW's lasting impressions. Human angle. For the soldiers themselves, the hot showers were more than mere hygiene. They were a profound psychological reprieve. Weeks of trench warfare, rain-soaked uniforms, and cold nights in mud-filled foxholes had left men exhausted, both physically and mentally. Entering a warm shower was a momentary escape, a return to normalcy amidst the chaos. Soldiers later described the experience as almost ritualistic. The sound of running water, the steam curling around them, the sensation of grime and sweat washing away. It restored a sense of individuality that the war so thoroughly eroded. Even brief moments of laughter or relaxed conversation in these showers strengthened bonds among men, reinforcing camaraderie in units otherwise defined by suffering and constant danger. The human impact was undeniable. Clean soldiers were healthier, happier, and more cohesive, proving that small comforts could sustain fighting spirit under extreme adversity. Tactical angle beyond morale. The strategic value of hygiene was critical. Disease had always been as deadly as bullets in warfare, and World War II was no exception. Trench foot, dysentery, lice infestations, and skin infections could incapacitate hundreds of men, threatening the effectiveness of entire battalions. Field showers reduced the risk of such ailments, allowing units to remain combat-ready. The Allies' planners recognized that a few hours spent in heated showers were an investment in operational efficiency. When men were clean, rested, and healthy, they could march, dig trenches, operate weapons, and maintain equipment more effectively. Hygiene was integrated into the broader tactical doctrine, linking physical well-being directly to battlefield performance. In this way, hot showers were not luxury. They were an instrument of war, designed to keep the fighting force at peak capability. Leadership angle. Commanders understood the importance of small comforts as extensions of leadership strategy. Senior officers, often observing from command posts or rear positions, ensured that engineers and logistics teams prioritized field sanitation alongside ammunition and medical supply. Leaders recognized that morale could break or make a unit under stress. By providing access to showers, they signaled care for their troops' dignity and welfare, reinforcing loyalty and trust. Memoirs from officers during the Ardennes campaign recount visits to forward shower sites. Noting the disciplined efficiency with which men rotated through, their spirits visibly lifted, despite the cold and artillery fire nearby. Leadership investment in these systems also served as a model of empathy in wartime. A rare, deliberate effort to maintain humanity while conducting operations in relentless combat zones. Each of these perspectives, human, tactical, and leadership, intertwines. Soldiers experienced personal relief and renewed energy. Commanders ensured operational effectiveness and cohesion. Disease and exhaustion were mitigated before they could compromise combat readiness. The combination of these factors elevated the simple act of a hot shower to a strategic tool, a calculated advantage that few on the German side could comprehend. The interplay of personal, tactical, and leadership dimensions lays the foundation for examining additional perspectives: technological innovation, enemy perception, and moral considerations, all of which deepen the understanding of why German POWs found the scene so astonishing. Technological angle. The presence of hot showers on forward battlefields was as much a triumph of engineering as it was of planning. Mobile field boilers, portable water tanks, and insulated canvas tents were designed to function under extreme conditions, often near artillery ranges or frozen terrain. Engineers developed systems that could heat and circulate water for dozens of men while minimizing fuel consumption. Water was sourced locally, treated to prevent disease, and distributed through temporary piping or improvised hoses. The efficiency of these systems allowed showers to be rotated quickly, ensuring that large numbers of troops could wash without disrupting operations. This technological ingenuity reflected the Allies' broader mastery of logistics and battlefield engineering, a sharp contrast to the German reliance on static infrastructure or limited resources, which often left their soldiers cold, dirty, and demoralized. Enemy angle. For German POWs, the scene was almost surreal. Used to frozen latrines, rationed water, and crude winter encampments. They could scarcely comprehend men standing under steaming water mere miles from artillery fire. Diaries and post-war interviews describe disbelief, a mixture of envy and incredulity. To these prisoners, Allied soldiers' access to warmth and comfort appeared to defy the chaos and deprivation they had long accepted as normal. This contrast was psychologically striking. While the Allies reinforced morale and readiness, German forces struggled to maintain basic survival. The POWs' observations served as an unintentional mirror, highlighting the organizational and logistical superiority that gave the Allies an edge beyond the battlefield. For many, it was a lesson in the hidden power of human engineering and foresight. Moral angle. There was also an ethical dimension to this seemingly minor advantage. Allied commanders recognized that even during total war, humane treatment of soldiers, and by extension prisoners, mattered. Providing showers and clean clothing was not only a practical necessity, but a moral statement. It demonstrated that human dignity could be preserved amid the machinery of conflict. German POWs, witnessing these measures firsthand, were often surprised to see the enemy maintain such standards. This moral contrast challenged their assumptions about the humanity of the opposing side, creating lasting impressions that extended beyond the immediate battle. Some would later reflect that these experiences reshaped their understanding of military ethics and the potential for decency even in war. The combined insights from technological innovation, enemy perception, and moral awareness reveal the full spectrum of what these hot showers represented. They were not merely a convenience. They were a strategic, psychological, and ethical instrument, an element of warfare that influenced morale, efficiency, and perception. For the German prisoners, it was a small yet profound shock, an episode that crystallized the disparities between the two sides and illuminated the hidden strengths behind the Allies' final push toward victory. These angles converge to set the stage for the climax, where the POW's astonishment meets the operational reality of hot showers under fire, revealing the tension, logistics, and human drama at the center of this extraordinary wartime scene. February 3, 1945. A forward Allied encampment near the Ardennes is blanketed in snow, artillery fire echoing faintly from the German lines a few kilometers away. German POWs, bundled in worn coats and shivering boots, are escorted past rows of canvas tents. Their breath fogs in the icy air. Then, through the steam rising like mist from the tents, they see it. Men, American and British soldiers, removing mud-caked boots, shedding frozen layers, stepping into warm showers. The sound of running water mixes with distant gunfire. Yet the soldiers' laughter is unmistakable, as if the front line itself had paused for a moment. The POWs freeze, eyes wide. This was no rear area luxury. These showers existed mere miles from active combat. Portable boilers hiss in the cold, pumping water through rudimentary piping. Engineers, working in the shadow of incoming fire, rotate supply tanks, ensuring a constant flow. Shower schedules are strictly organized, with each platoon allotted 15 minutes to wash, shave, and dress in clean uniforms. Every detail, water temperature, fuel rationing, timing, has been meticulously planned. The POWs notice the discipline amid the casualness. Soldiers chat, pat each other on the shoulder, and emerge refreshed, ready to return to the trenches. The contrast to their own experience is stark. Many had endured days without washing, boots frozen to the mud, rations minimal, morale deteriorating under the weight of hunger, cold, and fear. Watching the Allied troops, they struggle to comprehend the combination of safety, warmth, and structure that makes such a routine possible. From the commander's perspective, the operation is seamless. Officers monitor the rotation, ensuring no delays. Field medics check on minor injuries, while engineers adjust water pressure and maintain the fuel supply. Every element functions as part of a single integrated system designed to keep men healthy and combat-ready. It is here that the subtle power of organization becomes visible. The German POWs, witnessing this choreography, are confronted with an operational sophistication they had rarely experienced or imagined. For some POWs, disbelief shifts to reflection. One diary entry later recalls, "We stood there, shivering, and watched them. How could they laugh, wash, and stand there like men in a hotel while we froze and starved?" The simple act of taking a shower, performed under the threat of artillery, becomes emblematic of the Allies' advantage. Discipline, morale, and innovation combined. Even under the shadow of war, humanity persists, and with it, a quiet but undeniable superiority. In this scene, the German POWs are not passive observers. They are participants in a psychological turning point. The contrast between their deprivation and the Allies' calculated care crystallizes the disparity between the two sides. Here, the war is not just fought with weapons. It is waged with planning, foresight, and the ability to sustain men under impossible conditions. The astonishment etched on the POWs' faces marks a pivotal moment, one that will echo in memoirs, interviews, and historical records. The moment closes with the last soldier stepping from the steaming canvas, uniform fresh, boots polished, and eyes clear. The POWs linger, absorbing the scene, the realization settling in. The Allies had mastered more than firepower. They had mastered the art of sustaining life in the heart of war. This scene naturally transitions into the next part, where we examine how this operation was executed in precise detail, and how POWs recorded their reactions to the entire process. The orchestration of forward showers was a delicate balance of timing, engineering, and discipline. February 3, 1945, remains etched in the memories of many German POWs who witnessed it near the Ardennes. As dawn broke, engineers began assembling the tents, laying canvas sheets over wooden frames, and connecting the portable boilers to water tanks. Fuel was rationed carefully. Wood and coal were stacked neatly, ready to keep the water at a consistent temperature despite the freezing air. Small teams carried buckets, patched hoses, and monitored pressure gauges, ensuring each soldier would experience a brief, warm reprieve. Observers from the POW ranks were astonished at the efficiency. In less than an hour, dozens of men could rotate through, each emerging clean, fed, and organized. There was no chaos, no confusion, only the steady rhythm of men washing, shaving, and preparing for their next shift at the front. Helmets and wet uniforms were hung to dry on improvised racks, and soap, towels, and clean underclothing were distributed with precision. For German prisoners, accustomed to scarcity and improvisation, this level of planning was almost incomprehensible. The psychological dimension was equally profound. Officers ensured that soldiers did not linger. 15 minutes in the steaming water was both a practical and a symbolic period. It reinforced the idea that even in the midst of war, there could be order, safety, and a semblance of normalcy. POWs recorded these impressions in letters and post-war memoirs. One wrote, "It was as if the world had stopped for a moment. They laughed, they joked, and we could only stare. How could life continue like this in the middle of bullets and blood?" Another noted, "Even the smallest comforts were calculated. It was not indulgence, it was war management." From a tactical perspective, this operation was crucial. Maintaining clean, healthy soldiers minimized disease, reduced absenteeism, and ensured units remained combat effective. Trench foot, skin infections, and lice were constant threats, particularly during winter campaigns. By addressing hygiene systematically, commanders were not merely providing comfort, they were protecting the fighting capacity of their men. This attention to detail reflected broader operational excellence. While artillery barrages and small arms fire dominated the battlefield, invisible battles were being fought against disease and fatigue. battles the German POWs rarely witnessed among their own ranks. The human impact was immediate. Soldiers emerged energized, their morale lifted, ready to face the next engagement with clarity and focus. For the POWs, the sight was an emotional turning point. The juxtaposition of suffering and comfort highlighted not only the Allies' logistical superiority, but also their ability to prioritize human needs in the machinery of war. The German men began to understand that war was not won solely by bullets and bombs. It was also determined by the capacity to sustain and motivate the soldiers who wielded them. As the sun rose higher, the camp buzzed with activity. Men cleaned weapons, officers gave briefings, and engineers dismantled the shower setup, preparing it for transport to the next forward position. The POWs, still observing, carried with them an indelible image: steaming water, disciplined efficiency, laughter amidst chaos, and the extraordinary reality that even in the heart of war, human ingenuity could preserve dignity and life. This convergence of engineering, discipline, and human experience marked the climax of the story. The German POWs' astonishment would not fade. It would shape their understanding of the Allies' operational sophistication, the role of morale in warfare, and the extraordinary lengths to which armies would go to maintain their soldiers' strength. The final moments of this episode naturally lead to aftermath, where we examine the consequences of these practices for POW perception, troop health, and the broader strategic impact of morale-focused logistics. The immediate aftermath of the forward shower operations left a lasting impression on both soldiers and German POWs. For the Allies, the logistical triumph was tangible. Disease rates dropped significantly among units that rotated through these facilities. Incidents of trench foot, lice infestations, and minor infections decreased, allowing battalions to maintain strength even during prolonged winter engagements. Commanders noted in after-action reports that soldiers emerged more alert and disciplined, their morale buoyed by the rare comfort of warmth and cleanliness. Letters sent home described the rejuvenating effect. "A hot shower is worth more than a crate of rations," one infantryman wrote, capturing the subtle yet profound psychological advantage. For the German prisoners, the experience was transformative in a different sense. Witnessing the efficiency and care extended to enemy soldiers challenged their preconceived notions of warfare and human endurance. Diaries and post-war interviews revealed astonishment and even admiration. Many recalled the surreal sight of men laughing under steaming water while artillery roared nearby, an image that contrasted sharply with their own reality of freezing nights, muddy latrines, and scarcity. The experience highlighted a deeper truth. Victory was not solely determined by firepower, but by the ability to sustain and motivate men in the most adverse conditions. The psychological impact extended beyond the individual. German officers and POWs began to compare organizational systems, noting how Allied attention to morale and welfare allowed their troops to maintain operational effectiveness despite harsh winter conditions. In some cases, the contrast became a source of silent respect, fostering an understanding that the human dimension of war, health, hygiene, and morale could influence outcomes as decisively as artillery or armor. Additionally, the showers themselves became symbolic of the Allies' broader logistical sophistication. Mobile kitchens, medical units, and hygiene facilities collectively formed a system that supported combat readiness. For historians and military analysts, these operations are cited as evidence that the final Allied victories were achieved not only through superior firepower, but also through meticulous planning, attention to detail, and the humane management of troops. The convergence of practical benefit, morale boost, and POW perception created a subtle but powerful advantage. Soldiers returned to the front lines cleaner, healthier, and mentally sharper. POWs carried away impressions that would linger long after the war, shaping their understanding of the enemy and the nature of military excellence. This sets the stage for a deeper analysis of the broader consequences, long-term strategic implications, and the human stories that emerged in the months following these extraordinary operations. The long-term consequences of these forward hygiene operations extended beyond immediate morale and health benefits. For the Allies, they became a model for sustaining troops in prolonged campaigns. Commanders noted that units accustomed to regular hygiene rotations maintained higher operational readiness and suffered fewer non-combat casualties. Field manuals, updated after the Ardennes and Rhineland campaigns, emphasized the strategic importance of sanitation and morale, incorporating lessons learned from these mobile shower deployments. Engineers and logistics officers were commended for innovations that allowed complex support systems to function close to the front, even under fire. For German POWs, the experience left a lasting impression that would shape their post-war narratives. Diaries, letters, and memoirs frequently mention the bewildering scene of enemy soldiers washing under steaming tents, juxtaposed against the harsh conditions they themselves endured. Some POWs expressed quiet admiration for the Allies' ability to combine combat effectiveness with humane treatment, noting that the morale boost provided by small comforts like hot showers could rival the impact of an entire battle. These reflections were often tinged with disbelief. How could such discipline and care exist in the midst of artillery barrages and freezing winds? The broader strategic implications were subtle but significant. Allied forces, by maintaining hygiene, health, and morale, preserved the efficiency of their fighting units. Commanders observed that soldiers were quicker to recover from fatigue, less prone to illness, and better able to execute complex maneuvers. In contrast, German units, stretched thin and deprived of similar support, often struggled with attrition from preventable causes. This disparity, invisible on battlefield maps but evident in operational reports, contributed quietly to the Allies' final victories across Western Europe. Moreover, these experiences influenced post-war military doctrine. The recognition that troop welfare could directly impact combat effectiveness led to permanent changes in how armies approached logistics, medical care, and hygiene. Mobile shower units, field kitchens, and morale-focused support systems became standard components of modern military planning. The lessons learned in 1944-45 demonstrated that even minor comforts could be leveraged as strategic tools, shaping outcomes in ways both immediate and enduring. For the German prisoners, the aftermath was as much psychological as it was practical. Many left the war with an awareness that discipline, organization, and attention to human needs could define the effectiveness of an army. The memory of laughing soldiers stepping from steaming showers, warm and clean amidst the chaos of battle, became emblematic of the Allies' advantage, a quiet, human victory that endured beyond the battlefield. This understanding naturally leads to a reflective conclusion, highlighting the broader historical and philosophical significance of such seemingly small, yet profoundly impactful wartime innovations. In the heart of war, where mud, blood, and steel dominate the senses, the image of men laughing under steaming showers may seem almost trivial. Yet, for soldiers and prisoners alike, it represented something far greater: the persistence of humanity amid chaos. Hygiene, warmth, and comfort were not luxuries. They were instruments of survival, cohesion, and psychological resilience. They were subtle tools of warfare, reinforcing morale and combat readiness in ways that artillery and tanks could not. For the German POWs who witnessed these moments, the astonishment they felt was more than physical. It was moral and emotional. They saw a side of war often invisible to the front lines: careful planning, discipline, and consideration for human dignity, even in the midst of destruction. It challenged assumptions about the enemy and offered lessons that extended beyond military strategy into the realms of ethics and leadership. Historically, the mobile showers and hygiene operations of late 1944-45 illustrate the unseen dimensions of victory. They show that the management of human needs can shape outcomes as decisively as firepower. They remind us that war, while brutal, is also a stage for ingenuity, empathy, and the quiet exercise of care under impossible circumstances. Ultimately, these steaming tents, simple yet extraordinary, became symbols of resilience. A reminder that even in the darkest hours of human conflict, small acts of foresight and compassion could preserve life, restore morale, and tip the balance between despair and determination.